And I'll do the summary thing too, just for grins. Um, so the first thing on the agenda is I need somebody to take notes. Do I have a volunteer?
I think I'm obligated, but
I'm on my commute home, so probably not a good idea to have me do it.
you're recording it so I can.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you can certainly look at the recording and the AI summary thing. I'll send them to you once they're done.
okay, let me just go
Which I
ahead.
thought was pretty good.
Yeah, it was very helpful to me, Jonathan.
Okay, so thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Um, so the first thing is attendance. You'll easily get that from the video on the Zoom call.
Yeah.
And I think the summary actually will has the list of who's connected too.
Hmm.
So the first real order of business is to review the minutes from last time, and so let me share that.
Dave, I'm trying to switch devices here, so if you can let me join from my other device, that would be great.
Okay, hang on. I think I need to stop sharing so I can see that window.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me do the share again.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, can you guys all see the minutes?
Mhm.
See them.
Okay. Thank you again for taking the notes, Paul. I did apply the usual template because I know when I send it in this template, I'm not going to get pushback from the town clerk like I did a couple of times earlier. I don't even remember what they thought was missing, but it was like something that we had further down in the minutes. It just wasn't listed at the top. So give me a break, but whatever. And just let me know
Is
when you
that
want
is
me to
that the actual
scroll.
title? Friend of the Belmont Library. Wow.
What?
Up in the
I think I think that's I got to take that out. I thought about it once before. That's some ancient thing. Simpson had it in there because I think at one point in time, just like we had, and Charles, maybe you remember better than me, there was somebody from the library who liked to come to the meetings as well as whoever was their appointee. My first
It,
year or two.
it could have been. But then again, Simpson was Simpson.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's probably necessary anymore,
Yeah,
though.
it's not. I mean, there hasn't been anybody in there. I don't think we've had an NVM listed anywhere either. So I probably should just take that stuff out. It's like, but whatever. I'll probably I'll now that I'm thinking about it, I'll clean that up for the next one.
Should probably get a hold of Simpson and ask him to attend, and we'll list him as, West Coast friend of ITAC or
Yeah,
something.
right.
God,
Yeah.
I wonder if he's still on the faculty out there at the Navy postgraduate school. Yeah,
Yeah, I have no idea.
neither do I.
Yeah. I lost touch with him around 2012 or so. He was working. One of his research projects was in collaboration with somebody at MITRE, and so I would see him periodically.
Oh, really?
And once that project finished, that was it.
So I don't want to go down in the weeds too far, but the point in the middle of the bullet list below, Dan notes that it is difficult for vendors to apportion pricing accurately across towns. I didn't actually mean vendors. I meant that the towns would have to apportion uh, the costs, you know, and maybe that really would wind up back at the vendors, but it's a difficulty of if two towns collaborate to buy something, how do they
Oh,
How do they
okay.
how do they split the costs? You know, is it by the size of the town or the size of the IT budget, or you know, there's 1,000 questions that could come up.
Portion to divide.
How does that look?
I think that's fine.
Okay. So I mean, this is sort of a side note, but the hybrid town meeting thing, my sense is that I thought we did do hybrid town meetings. They just chose not to do it this time, for whatever reason. And I don't know that there's anything ITAC can do from a research perspective that would change their mind, right? I mean, I'm getting into town politics here, I guess, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's gone from being a technical question to a political question, and
Yeah.
it's outside our charter, I guess.
Right. We can make a recommendation, and that, as we've noted before, I think it's in the next couple of bullets down. They are free to ignore our advice.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fact that it does potentially cost more money in terms of, resources and staff time, but
Yeah.
it's a trade-off that they can make if they want to, but it's a if the only reasoning is because, as one of the select board put it, like people aren't paying attention, I don't think that's a really strong argument, personally.
Yeah, the reasoning has changed over you know, since they declared that they were no longer going to be doing remote town meeting. And, initially it was, people aren't paying attention. This isn't in the spirit of town meeting, and it's kind of more tradition focused. And more recently, especially with Dave departing, it's turned to more financial and human resources focused arguments. So it's a moving target as to why they don't want to do it, but I do think that the cost argument, I mean, given the marginal extra cost of doing a remote town meeting, is not something that's persuasive. But
Thanks.
yeah.
For the light board, would it be better to just say light board rather than BMLD board? Because I'm not sure that's the proper designation, particularly in the sub bullets, right?
Yeah,
Because
I think that's
not the
probably
light
the
department
more,
that's concerned. It's the light. It's the board.
Agreed.
So are you going to define what BML is above? Where is that?
I'm taking it out.
Should there be a capital B for light board, like capital
Oh yeah,
L, capital
that's
B?
probably a good idea.
Well, is there anything wrong with referring to it as the Belmont Light Board, and then using the acronym BLB throughout?
Yeah, and I think they actually use MLB for municipal light board, but I think I'm fairly safe with this.
All right. Okay. There you go.
Well, the one you're just edited might be a case where we want to split that hair, because we're relatively new at interacting with the light board, but we've been interacting with the light department for a longer period of time.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. And I haven't done anything about this. There's nothing for me to approach, but to talk about tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, so the recordings are all set and the website's been updated.
Great.
And I have no idea if anybody actually looks. I know there's some stats you can find on the YouTube page.
Doesn't matter. I probably have some additional recordings. I'll go through, Dave, and make sure that everything I've got on my laptop has been uploaded. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it has, but there may be some additional meetings that aren't there, so I'll double check that.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Dave, I've never tried it, but if I went to YouTube and I looked in the search field, what should I type in to find the Belmont ITAC YouTube page? Just Belmont ITAC?
Yeah, I think Belmont ITAC search would find it. Because I think
Okay.
that's what's in the title.
I'm going to try that right now. If I could learn to type. Okay. There's a lot of other Belmonts out there, and for all we know, they have their own ITACs. Nope, it's us.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. We talked a little about there's the subcommittees. We had an opportunity to do that again tonight if we want to. Any other changes suggested, or can we ready to take a vote?
I'm good to vote.
Yeah, me
All
too.
right.
I'm good. I'm caught up.
I have a motion.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Jonathan, please record that Charles made the motion. Dan?
I seconded. I thought I heard someone
Oh.
else too, but
No, I'm not worried about, I don't think we have to write down the second, but we're supposed to write down who made the motion.
yeah.
I'm asking for the vote. So Dan, you voting aye? Yeah,
Aye.
okay. I'll vote
Sorry
yes.
about that.
Charles, Jim,
Aye.
Paul,
I
and Jonathan.
I abstain.
Okay,
I wasn't there.
that's enough.
I
It's
wasn't
enough
there
for,
either, but I figured somebody needed to vote in order to get a quorum on the minutes.
yeah, I don't know what the rule is on that. All right, thanks, guys. I will take care of exporting this to Word so I can send it to the town clerk for publication. All right. I don't see anybody from the public here. I don't see Matt here yet either, unfortunately. Hopefully he wasn't trying to pop in and I didn't see it while we were talking there. I don't
Well, you
see
want
any-
to send
I don't see any messages from him asking to get in, so he didn't promise. He said that he would try to come in. So anyway, there's a couple of things that I already sent the email. They announced that they hired Mr. McClure from Watertown, and he starts sometime, I forget the exact date, but sometime in August. To his credit, he wanted to give Watertown a lot of time to figure out his succession strategy. And Dan and I met him back in middle of June, I guess, just before our last meeting. And I found him to be pretty impressive. He's got a good background. He's not a long timer, so he likes to get in, build the organization, get it to a stable state, and then find the next challenge. That's it, uh, Patrice described how she met him at some kind of a conference and was really just asking him for some advice. And somehow or other, she was quite frank with us. She didn't think they could afford him, and she didn't think that he would want to take on a situation like this that is potentially a disaster out of the gate. I think that might even be the term she used, but I'm not going to promise that. And I guess somewhere along he thought about it and said, let's talk. And so it feels pretty good, but it is a challenge because there's a lot of stuff that has to be made up. I think there's only like 2 or maybe 3 IT staff on the town side left. So many were already gone by the time Dave left. For whatever,
just 2, I think.
I couldn't remember the number, but yeah, and so he's got the challenge. One thing that I was positive of that meeting is he seemed to really like the idea of a citizen committee to bounce ideas off. And I don't know if he's just not had that anywhere else or what, but he seemed to really kind of like the idea of having that backing. So we'll see how that plays out. I do know that Patrice was, when she was talking to us about the job description, and she sent a couple of emails to me just directly because she was concerned about us getting into a deliberation on an email list. And and she said that she really wanted to try to get that relationship going as part of the hiring process, part of the interviews and so on. So, see, yep.
It's good to hear that they're interested. He's interested in engaging with us. That's really good to hear, because I feel like the communications has gotten more and more challenging with the less frequent attendance at ITAC, and maybe we can move things back in the other direction. It doesn't have to go back all the way to where it was when those guys attended every single meeting, but
yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. And in fairness, one of the issues is that attending our meeting is overtime, unpaid overtime for these guys. And so there, one thing that worked at least a couple of times with Dave and me at the end was we had a conversation and I reported back. It's not quite as ideal as attending a meeting, but it's certainly better than nothing. And we'll see how it goes with.
I also don't know if it might be possible if the members of the committee might be able to be flexible on the time and either meet at noontime or something when it might be during their workday, or like first thing in the morning when.
Yeah. So that's and we
agree.
Yeah, and I proposed that to Dave. He didn't seem averse to it. The time we ended up with a phone call was simply just he was swamped with so much stuff that the phone call was just easier for him. He found some time. He called me up and said, "Can we do this now?" and that's what we did. But yeah, I agree. I think it would be great because we could certainly have, if we don't have a quorum, a few of us could get together with the guy. Right, because I don't want to have to try to post an open meeting to have a conversation with somebody. That would just be probably way more work for us than it's worth doing. But if you get like 3 of us or whatever, 4 is the max, to be able to meet the guy at breakfast or lunch, that would that would solve, if not solve it completely, it would certainly help.
I
Yeah,
was,
that's, sorry,
I
go
was,
ahead, Charlie.
I would suggest, well, actually a question and then a suggestion or two regarding this. This gentleman's, Mr. McClure's job title, what will it be? Is he IT director or IT manager?
They gave it a different title, and I don't have the select board thing in front of me. But it is director of something. It doesn't it's was it didn't say IT specifically, but it was like director of either innovation or director of technology, something along those lines that they came up with.
Okay, but he
Uh,
got basically what he's been, or the position has been promoted from
that's
manager.
correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the um I think that they realized that if they wanted a director, they have to hire a director and not a hands-on manager. Dave was, was a manager, and they wanted him to act like a director, but he wasn't really, and he certainly wasn't given the resources to be a director. If you're a hands-on manager, you can't be a director. My opinion, but I lived that, and I made that mistake, and I got the crap beat out of me by my boss for it before I let go of the hands-on stuff. And
But this fellow is going to be, I assume, and I'm not sure, he will be allowed quickly to hire what
that's
we
right.
call an assistant, or we could call an IT manager. Or he
That
could.
so he's gonna figure out how he wants to staff the town's IT. Um, he when he was talking to Dan and me, I don't remember whether it was Watertown or one of the other towns. He said that he did a lot of stuff with service providers as opposed to all full time. He said it was a mix, so he had his own set of hands-on people, but he just needed more bodies than he could afford to have full time, and so he's got that concept in his head. Frankly, I think, given where the town is, I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I know a lot of small companies that do that. Um, you can do pretty well because a lot of these roles aren't necessarily full time.
Okay, another
So-
thing, if you don't mind, to sort of introduce him to us and us to him, do you think it would be a good idea when we decide on when the September meeting will be, since there will be no August meeting,
Right.
to invite him, since he will
Yes.
probably have
Yep.
an email address at some soon. You could send him an email inviting him to the meeting at 7:30 on whatever date it is. And that would be his way of meeting us. He might like that, especially if he's interested in having a citizens committee, at least as a sounding board. And then we can find out a little bit more about, mutually convenient scheduling. My feeling on that is, if this fellow lives locally, Dave Petto didn't live locally. He lived up in Salem, so it was a pain in the ass for him to wait and then to commute.
I don't think he lives locally. I think it's I don't
Yeah.
remember where he lives, but
I don't remember. All I remember is that he saves about 15 minutes coming to Belmont instead of Watertown, I think was what he said.
right. No,
somewhere up north, but I don't remember which town.
Well, maybe it's not so far that meeting after dinner would be a convenience, just so long as he can do it remotely, which we
Yeah.
do.
Right. Yeah. So that is my intent. My intent is to get the invite out to him. My expectation is September for him. He might feel too soon because he's still getting his head on. At that point, he may still be wrapping his head around things, and that'd be fine if he wanted to wait a month. But my intent is to sometime I'll look. Actually have a note on my Google Calendar task list to send a note to Patrice. Let's see, it looks like I think it's August 12th, to let me know how to get a hold of him so I can invite him to a meeting at his discretion, whether he wants to come to the first one available or wait till the second.
Okay,
So
good.
Dave, your earlier comment jogged my memory, and that I'm pretty sure I saw it written somewhere, maybe it was the Belmont Voice even,
Yeah, it
that
was the Belmont Voice. That's where I found out.
that his title is Director of Innovation.
Innovation.
I remember reading that and scratching my head thinking, how does that apply? So maybe it's my own personal bias, but I just don't think it's at all relevant, that particular title to his tasks. But that's not for me to call. I just giving my opinion. The other thing though is someone else mentioned maybe having our meetings, or not all of them, but occasional meeting during the day, and I just say that I'm perfectly fine with that. So I don't know how other people feel, but so if in fact it made it easier for someone like uh, Dave McClure, is that his name?
I think it Steve?
Oh, Steve. Okay. Um,
That's my
Mr.
record.
McClure.
It is McClure. I'm spacing on the first name now. I think Steve, but I'm not certain.
It could be very well be. And so I mean, I'd be if it was more convenient for him, I would be perfectly fine with having moving one of our meetings to a daytime slot.
Yeah, I could do that too as well, if that turned out to be more convenient for him.
Okay, good to know. So Matt hasn't made it on, so I will just bring up. Um, I saw a posting, I think it was from the Belmont Media Center, where they were honoring um, what the heck was Phil's last name? Phil Sullivan, who's retired. Which of course, raised all sorts of flags. He's the town network administrator. He worked for the schools, but he was the network guy for the town. And so I sent a note off to Matt and said, "Hey, we're going through all this stuff on the town side. How are you guys doing in dealing with this?" And I asked Matt to attend tonight so you could hear it straight from him, but instead I'll just reiterate what Matt told me was that they knew that Phil, was planning to retire probably a year ago. So they've been working with this. They've been training up his former assistant to be the new network guy, and I'm forgetting the name, and I don't have my email up in front of me to read the whole thing. And they're planning to just hire another hands-on techie to fill that backfill that spot. So the school at least is in good shape, and I guess the assistant has been around a number of years and knows the network pretty well, so there shouldn't be any real major concern about any the risks associated with that. And so that's at least somewhat good news.
Say, Dave, do you have any sense of what the staffing size of the school IT department is? We're I think sensing that it's much larger than the town IT.
It is, but
You know,
it is definitely larger. I at one point they gave us numbers, and that was a long time ago, so I don't know how accurate it was. But my recollection was Dave had something like 6 or 7, and Steve, this was before Matt, Steve had something like 11 or 12. That said, my understanding is that Steve had several who were very, very junior hands-on techies running around the school helping teachers plug in equipment and stuff like that, as opposed to what I think of as IT staff. They were kind of more like AV type staff, whereas Dave's staff was more of the system administrator type. So even though there were more people in the school, there's a good chance that salary wise that Dave's group was actually still more expensive.
okay. Just wondered.
Any other questions on that? Unfortunately, without Matt, that's all I've got.
But you have no sense of or at least he hasn't conveyed to you any major issues IT wise in the schools?
No, no. Yeah, like I said, I asked him about the one thing. He answered the one thing, and I was hoping he might join us to give us a chance to talk about some other stuff. I will say I did offer to get a list of things that we would not want to ask him on a recorded meeting, but apparently that's not necessary. All right. All right. So with that, I guess the other thing is, Dan, this is still your topic. Do you want to talk about the subcommittees? I know we did a little bit last time. We did a little bit of speculation on that, but I don't think we really got very far with it.
Well, I still feel like we're a little shorthanded. Because we've got, if I count correctly, three members who are not
Yeah.
here.
Correct.
Basically a third of us. I don't know. Does anyone have any strong urge to push forward with this right now, or would people be okay waiting until September? Given that the rest of the summer is going to be eaten away by vacations and things like that, so we're probably not going to really begin any of these activities immediately. But if people want to get started right away, I won't stand in your way. But if people want to wait, I won't stand in your way to do that either.
Well, let me just ask, is there anything of a urgent or hot potato nature that we would want to get going sooner than September? I have no problem with waiting till September, but I just wanted to ask that question in case there's something you think needs attention sooner.
Personally, I don't think we need to form committees and make assignments, but might it not be beneficial just to sort of talk about this at a higher level in terms of the types of things we might want to talk about? Are there sort of public information issues, that might be of particular concern? In other words, to sort of frame what we might be starting to do, come September and October.
Actually, I want to start by drilling down into one of the things that you just mentioned, Charlie. I agree that except for open meeting law, there's no reason why we need subcommittees. But because of open meeting law, it gives us the flexibility of being able to deliberate on things in small groups rather than having the whole committee be involved. At least that's the way I interpret the rules. So if we have a committee, if we form a committee with 2 or 3 people on it, those 2 or 3 people can go off and don't need to.
Oh no, they need to do their meetings.
Oh yeah. Of course. But it's only those.
It's only those 3. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, sorry, misunderstood you.
And historically, that's been the way we've done it. Is that There's been these small groups that have gone off to do these things. Now, there's not a huge amount of history there, but at least the last time we did this, that worked pretty well, in my opinion. So I think subcommittees could be useful here. So let's see how things unfold, I guess.
Okay.
And remind me, do the subcommittees have to post these as open meetings?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with Dan. I think subcommittees are super useful, and moving the ball ahead, in between these monthly committee meetings and focusing on specific issues. I think we did well with those. So I'm in favor of doing it again.
These, if we were to approach this as a series of topics that would be of use to the general public in the town, do we necessarily, for a topic-oriented activity with 2 or 3 people, have to have the formality of subcommittees and minutes and so on? Or am I just hoping for a reduction in the red tape that can't be avoided.
Well, I think the latter definitely applies, unfortunately, but um, so I think it depends on where things are in the process. So to use the example, the better example of the group that you were part of, Charlie, the public health one, I think that's what we called it, something like that, where you
Yeah.
found all the speakers and stuff. I think it's the deliberating on the topic and who you're going to reach out to and so on. But once you started down the process, once you had identified that and you started working with whoever on the in the senior center or wherever you were doing the presentations, or was it the library? I'm forgetting now. To bring them in. At that point, it became their thing, and you were just a volunteer helping them bring in a speaker, and so you didn't have all. It wasn't considered a committee deliberation or things like that. And that's my understanding of how that sort of thing would work. So if so as you're figuring out a strategy for bringing in the right kind of thing, yeah, that's the committee meeting. But once you're getting into the operational part of it and you're working with someone on the town side, it becomes the town's project, and that's not a committee. It's not part of the committee per se. And that's what I remember Glenn Wong telling us anyway.
Well, yeah, we use Glenn as a moderator for a lot of these
Yeah.
topics, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure that my memory may be failing me, but I remember things more like we brought somebody in to talk about self-driving vehicles. What
Yep.
the state. That's not really a public health issue and per se. And we also
Well, it is if they start letting them around here.
yeah, I know. If they don't work, it becomes a serious one. And we also had something where somebody had a connection with an intelligence. Actually, it was military intelligence, but it also the person had gone into the private sector and had a certain amount of, I think, cybersecurity to it.
That's right. Yeah, one of Glenn's colleagues.
One of
Yeah.
Glenn's. And the interesting thing was, Dave, we did like the autonomous driving vehicles. We did that up at the middle school auditorium, and nobody came. I thought that was one of the most interesting things we did, but came. And then we did the one on cybersecurity in the assembly room of the now leveled library. So, I mean, we actually moved the venue around town to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's part of that is packed hall always looks better. I think we got a lot more people at Chenery, but of course the auditorium is probably 10 times the size, so it didn't look very full. But
you're probably right. I'm exaggerating by saying nobody came. My wife came. She came.
Yeah, no, there weren't as many people as I thought there were going to be, but
we had a good lineup too. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
was, at that point in time, Boston, I think, had some self-driving developers who came and spoke, and then we had somebody from the Commonwealth, from the state government, who was involved with that, and then there was at least one other person. It was an interesting panel of speakers, and I think they had some visual aids that they brought along too. But that's sort of the type of thing that, I think those types of sort of general information topics would be of interest to the public. And we could, if we thought, we put our minds together, I think we could come up with probably 4 or 5 topics, and those could be strung out over, a period of time.
I think some of the topics might seem a little repetitious, but it seems like every couple of months there's a new thing in the news. For example, the thing that happened over in Arlington where the
Mhm.
Yeah.
the town got swindled out of I forget how much money, but it was quite a bit. And
Business email compromise.
yeah, so they basically got social engineered out of the money.
It was online fraud,
Yeah.
essentially. And that's something that I know I happened to be it would happen to be Cambridge Savings Bank. I was in talking to them about my account there. And the fellow who's been the manager there for years, and he's a senior guy in the management of the bank, said, I foresee half of my time moving forward simply helping people with online fraud issues and correcting the damage caused by them, which, it's sort of, I wasn't surprised that he thought he had to spend time on it.
And we
That
lost Paul.
that seemed like a lot of time, but he's probably right. People are going to be hit by that, and they're going to, have to be helped both administratively and to a certain degree emotionally too, to recover from it.
Yeah, I've got 2 letters in the last 2 weeks. One about Ticketmaster. I don't know if everybody.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the last time I bought anything from Ticketmaster, but apparently I'm still in their database,
Yeah.
which
My
is
wife and my
now
daughter
which is
got
now on the
those,
dark
and
web.
yeah. Right.
And there was something else, probably some hospital that had some compromise recently, and so yeah, I don't know if the the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know whether I'm ever going to be a private citizen again.
You have to be a private citizen that takes a lot of precautions.
Yeah.
Pay
Well, the
cash for
problem is
Well, I
that
mean,
it's
there's a
not your
huge,
control.
there's a huge opportunity, I think, to educate the public about, the specifics of these attacks and kind of getting them to have kind of radar about this, so that, for example, my dad got scammed out of $1,000 because he, was on some website and there was a pop-up like, oh, you've been hacked, call Microsoft. And, he called the number and, oh, yes, this is
Yep.
Microsoft. And, ended up going down and buying some gift card, at a pharmacy and, giving them the number. I mean, so just educating the public about sort of like, here's how these, things work, and getting them to have the same type of radar that they have in the real world, where, if somebody walks up in the, uh, supermarket parking lot and tries to tell you a luxury watch, you're going to know, like, no, this isn't where you buy a luxury watch. This is not right. Giving them that same awareness online of, Microsoft is not going to ask me to buy them a Target gift card. A pop-up on a website is not, that's not how you're going to find out about a malware infection. It's going to come from your desktop antivirus. And if you don't have desktop antivirus, you should get it. I mean, those types of basic hygiene stuff, because people are losing six figures and more in these business email compromise scams. Are very sophisticated. They follow often account takeovers,
Right.
and sophisticated phishing attacks, and then they're waiting for, the window of opportunity, a house closing or a big funds transfer, and then they're jumping in and saying, oh, no, send it to this account instead. So it's very subtle stuff, and just talking to people about how these things work would really help inform them about what to be on the lookout for.
Yeah,
But some of
absolutely.
the stuff is like not super subtle, like the whole like gift cards. That seems to be the currency that a lot
Yeah,
of these. So if anybody asks you to buy them a gift card, that should be like similar to the
yeah.
Rolex watch in the trunk of somebody's car.
Yep.
And some of it is that, people, especially, elderly people, some of them are starting to have cognitive issues, and they are extra vulnerable because they're losing that sense of, groundedness. I mean, I'm dealing with this with both of my parents, and so some of it is also just sort of saying, hey, if you're starting to have some issues, recollection, and then just understand that you're really vulnerable, and have you know have someone you can call, your kid, or I mean, that was sort of what I was saying to my
Yeah.
dad. It's like, Dad, how could you have not, like, my whole career is cybersecurity. When you got the pop-up saying you had an infection, like, why did you not call me? Like, I could have helped you, but he just
Well,
he
It's
got
funny you
caught
say
up in
that.
it.
It's funny you say that with
I'll
people
tell you
getting
why,
older.
because they made it so easy. They gave instructions for,
Yeah, and they were so convincing, like,
yeah.
oh, call Microsoft, and then you call the number. Oh, yes, this is Microsoft employee 69532, and how are you? And it's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
No, the
Not
same.
It's
realizing,
funny.
like, that's not how it works. That's not how Microsoft support works. Microsoft's, they don't do this, you know, like, this isn't,
Well,
yeah. So,
the same thing happened, to my mom, where she mentioned a couple days later, thank goodness I have Symantec on my computer. I didn't even realize I'd installed it, but it saved my bacon. I'm like, Mom, tell me more.
right.
And
Uh-oh.
so, yeah, it popped up a thing in the web page saying, your license has expired and call this number to renew it, and the rest, So,
It's funny what you're saying though with people getting older, because there may be some recommendations regarding like having digital guardians. That probably is too technical a term, but enabled to access like parental accounts and things like that. And like,
Yeah.
there are all these conversations about like when are your parents unsafe to drive anymore, and when do you take the keys away? And it seems like some of that should, it's hard to do, but some of that should apply to accounts and stuff too, for
I'm almost
people's
wondering
own protection.
if the town should have some kind of a online fraud hotline that they could call and just sort of kind of get a sanity check on this. Like, hey, I'm getting these emails, or I got this phone call,
Police
and
are
they're
supposed
telling
to
me,
handle it.
yeah, but they don't have the expertise and the resources. I
and
mean, my
Well,
mom
I
had one of
mean,
these.
who in the town could provide it? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
problem. I mean, right? That would
Well,
be
you you
that would
could you could you could have a volunteer. You could find people and sort of train them to sort of be like, listen, you could take people who are not subject matter experts in cybersecurity, but train them around online fraud enough so that they could just sort of be there, and we could have a hotline that people could call, and they could be like, yeah, do not do that. This sounds suspicious, and
yeah,
something like
okay. So
that. I mean, that,
you're talking about something different than I thought you were talking about. My
yeah,
my
just
point is that
yeah, no, yeah.
if something really does happen, you really do want to get it into a police report. Because you're right, the police aren't necessarily the best trained, but they take the report, they put it into the system, and things ultimately escalate higher, typically, unfortunately, only depending on how much money's involved, um, and beyond. And then you get all the stuff on how to protect your identity. I mean, I've been through this both personally and through the foundation, like I talked about last time. Um, Calling the police was the most
Yeah.
important thing we did, even
and
if they were not directly going to be really the ones running the investigation.
yeah, it's people don't understand that if they don't report the crime, no one will be prosecuted.
Right.
And but there's also, from what I've heard, I don't remember the exact statistics on it or whether anybody has them, but a lot of these fraud cases, unless they rise above a certain level, are never reported because people are ashamed. They're just
Yep.
embarrassed that they
I've heard
fell
that
for
too.
it. And again, that means that if you're one of these scam artists, if you don't get too greedy, no one will ever come after you.
Yeah.
And we've got to get rid of that stigma. We've got to say, it's actually kind of normal now to be targeted by these folks, and it's not totally unusual for you to fall victim to them. But if you don't report it, they'll never get caught. They'll never get punished. So
It's also the case that if the banks are in a position to help you, if there's
Yeah.
no police report, they actually don't have as much of an obligation legally to do anything about it. We actually, in my case, in the case of the foundation, we were able to claw back about 2/3 of the second theft because we, by virtue of the fact that we reported it and then the police went to the bank. Well, we reported it to the bank too, but the police actually gave them whatever subpoena, whatever the proper terminology is, for them to go to the receiving bank and say this was all the result of fraud, and that gave them the right to pull the money back.
Yeah.
That it was a fraudulent transfer. So there's good reasons to call the cops.
Yeah, our friend Jim Siracusa, he gets involved in cases like this as a detective. And so, I mean, yes, the police are not IT experts or online experts, but they do, I know, encourage people to file police reports, and apparently they will follow up. But I think, Dave, it does depend on the they want people to go on record. To the degree to which they or even other federal agencies will follow up really depends on the scope or the value of the fraud. But they do want you to file the police report.
Yep.
They do that. But in any case, Paul, your idea of a volunteer call-in agency, I mean, that's been done for other things. On the medical side, they have suicide prevention. I dare say they probably have call-in centers for people who are undergoing serious diseases like cancer. This would just be another case of you could describe this as not only a criminal, but a public health issue, because it's affecting a lot of people. And yes, it probably tends to affect people who are older and who are subject to the nuisances of the perpetrators.
And my guess is that people who are experiencing this have moments of doubt in their minds as to whether they're being scammed, but that they don't know who to call to get a sanity check. And of course, they're probably, ashamed to call their kids or something. I don't want them to think I'm like losing it. And, they don't know who to call out. So, I mean, I do think that there's probably a moment when these things are going down, these scams, where people are like, man, something doesn't feel right about this, but I don't know, and they just kind of go through it. And I do feel like if there was some kind of a hotline where you could just get a sanity check of like, hey, what is this right? I mean, this doesn't feel right. And have somebody be like, yeah, no, this screams of a scam, and just here's what you need to do, cut off communication, like, call your bank, call your credit card companies, whatever information you've given them. Like, so, I mean, I don't know. I do,
Charlie,
I think there are a lot of people in town who are looking for opportunities to volunteer, and you could kind of train them on that.
Yeah, I think
Charlie mentioned some of the other sort of similar or analogous things like suicide hotlines and things. And I would think that the advantage of the police department doing it is that they have a certain probably legal protections, because you wouldn't want to get in a situation where you had a volunteer who gave the person the wrong advice and then got sued for providing the wrong advice, Jonathan
there's got to be
told me
some sort of good Samaritan law there.
Well, yeah, but we would probably want to research like what was the bounds of that, and maybe if this was done under the aegis of the town, maybe there's some way to get some liability protection for the people who do that, assuming they have a certain amount of training. Because you wouldn't want, like, if Jonathan was providing the service, you wouldn't want Jonathan, if he gave somebody the right or wrong advice, to end up like as a good Samaritan having to pay a penalty for that when he's making
That's a good point. And you'd probably, if this ever was set up, the people to instruct the volunteers certainly, If it wasn't the police department, it certainly should have some sort of police department influence over it.
Well, I think there's two different things, or there might be two different things. One is, I think the thing Paul's talking about, which is, and I think there's a Reddit for this, but yeah, I don't think we want to point senior citizens at Reddit, but I think it's like, is this a scam or something? And you can go there and say, someone offered me this and told me that, and then people come on and say, oh yeah, that's this old scam or whatever. And the second one is, hey, I've already been scammed and I want to report it. And how do I do that? What information do I need to provide, and who do I need to provide it to? And that sort of thing. Like, so I think those are two separate things. I don't know if they can be combined or whether that, one we can kind of crowdsource, but the other is, it's got personal identifying information involved, and that's really got to be the police or somebody with an official title.
Yes, however, as far as if you want to address the volunteer agency that's been properly instructed on how to deal with these calls, that can still all be done anonymously. I mean, the advice of going to the police is advice. You don't necessarily have to ask for the person's name in order to give that type of advice.
Yeah.
No.
So sort of a clearinghouse. Like, yeah, it sounds like, well, you haven't been scammed yet. Here's what I think you should do. Versus, it sounds like you've already been scammed. You should go to the police and tell them this thing. And,
In any case, I think we've sort of framed, a possible topic for a public.
Yep.
Great. All right. Paul, I think you said you had a couple of other business items.
Yes, on the library.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not much to report. I am meeting with the Library Board of Trustees next month at their monthly meeting to give them an update on just what we've been up to. And I think they've got some initiatives that they're looking to us to help with. One of them actually is already kind of moving forward, which is they're interested in hosting another Fix-It clinic, which would be the first we've hosted since before the pandemic. And we've set a tentative date for mid-November for that. And I've worked with Jonathan Crones, who's the local kind of Fix-It clinic, Obi-Wan Kenobi, to get that scheduled. So we'll be doing that. I think Public Library wants to host it, probably at the Senior Center. But ITAC can certainly help to promote it and maybe help staff it and so on. So that's going to be happening. I'm not sure what their other initiatives are, but I'll hear about that when I meet with them in September, and I'll report back to you on that. And yeah, I think that's about. I'm not sure what's going on with the building and the IT stuff that may be on the agenda, but I'm not sure.
Paul, I know when we toured the new high school, they showed us Makerspace. Would it make more sense, or would it even be possible to have the Fix-It clinic there instead of the Senior Center, where they're starting from nothing?
Well, if you've been to a Fix-It clinic, the in theory that would be the perfect space, right? Like a Makerspace. They got these great tables, but practically, Fix-It clinics really more are like big tables spread around, a meeting room with, Fix-It coaches at each of them, and people kind of, crowd around each table, and, whether it's, their blender or whatever it is they brought to be fixed. So that the Makerspace actually probably wouldn't be great for that, just because it would be, as I remember it, it might be hard for people to sit down at those tables. If I remember, they're kind of standing tables.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say actually the CAF at the high school would be a perfect place to do a Fix-It clinic, tons of space, And I mean, we did it at the library before in the common room, the community room at the library, which was kind of small. But the ones I've been to generally have been at libraries and other public buildings, and you really just need a big building and a bunch of long tables
And a bunch
and
of power
chairs
outlets. Yeah.
and a bunch of power strips. Yeah, that's the other thing. So good idea. I've thought about that too, because that makerspace room is a really cool space. But honestly, I think the CAF would be a better fit, or the big meeting room at the senior center would do well as well, I think. So either of those are fine. I think the problem I had with the senior center is last time I approached them, they wanted money to rent the room, but I think Peter Sturziero at the library can pull some strings and get us the space.
I think every time we call it senior center, the price goes up. We got to call it the Beach Street Center.
The Beach Street Center. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I said 200. I meant 400. Fix It Clinic, probably mid-November, TBD on what their other agenda items are, but it sounds like they've got some stuff. I don't know if it's related to the new building or whether it's more program. Well, I mean, the other thing I know for a fact is they are interested in hosting some community sessions along the lines of what we've been talking about regarding cybersecurity issues, technology related issues. So the public library is very interested in hosting those and sponsoring them. I think they want to try and keep the community engaged while the building process is going on and keep that going. So they're looking to us to maybe help them get some of those things scheduled. So that would be the other thing. So that would kind of tilt the scales in terms of figuring out, hey, what do we want to talk about? Can we line up some speakers and kind of let's make it happen, and we can work with the library to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've got a good network. I've been running a security of IoT meetup for around 10 years. So, certainly on the cybersecurity topic, we want to get a speaker and line up a talk, whether it's a virtual or in person. I'm happy to work my network to make that happen.
Cool. Do we have anything else, or are we ready to go for scheduling in September?
I'm good.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So it looks like third Thursday in September is the 19th. How's that sound?
1 second, please. I'm going to be out of town all that week and probably unable to join remotely.
I have another commitment that day.
Let me take a quick look here.
That actually is the night of the Board of Library Trustees meeting.
Oh, okay. So what about the following Thursday, the 26th?
26th is currently open for me. So
Okay.
Yep, open for me as well.
Me too.
Okay, so let's call it for Thursday, September 26th.
Yeah, that works.
Also gives our new director of innovation that much more time to
Get settled.
Innovate.
settle.
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my work calendar, which doesn't have these things, but I know there's usually holidays around then.
They're on time this year if you're going by the Jewish calendar, but they're late on the secular calendar. They start in October.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So
I'll
moved.
move.
I assume
Second.
it's unanimous? Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Indeed. Thank you.
Great.
Everybody.
Good night, all.
Right. Thanks.